Today, authoritarian power doesn't just silence people on the streets. It shapes what millions believe to be true. Good evening, my name is Maia Mazurkiewicz, and welcome to the anatomy of disinformation. Digital repressions crush protests. In Poland, Russian networks weaponize societal divisions. Different countries, but the same playbook. And we are all inside it. Russian influence in Poland doesn't arrive with a label. It blends with everyday debate about refugees, security, and identity. Who researches it? Who counters it? And is coordination between the state and NGOs enough to push back? Let's talk about that and more with our first guest.
Konrad Adamowicz, Deputy Director of the Department for Strategic Communications and Countering Foreign Disinformation at the Polish Foreign Ministry. He works for the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where he specializes in countering foreign disinformation. As a diplomat, he previously served as a consular crisis coordinator and was posted to Erbil and Beirut. Mr. Adamowicz holds degrees in Arabic Studies from the University of Warsaw and International Public Policy from University College London. His work focuses on strategic communication, crisis management, and combating foreign disinformation.
Konrad, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Maya. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, pleasure, but disinformation and influence operations that are happening on the Polish ground is less of a pleasure. So what are the tactics that Russia is currently undergoing in Poland?
Well, actually, the tactic did not change a lot over the course of the last few years. Russia is usually trying to achieve two particular goals in their influence operations, both in Poland and other countries as well. They try to sow as much chaos and as much polarization as possible. So this is the main goal. Because it makes much easier for Russia to operate in the international environment, which is divided, chaotic, and unable to devise a coherent response to whatever Russia is trying to do.
Why so?
Why so? Because we can stand against Russia if we stand together as European Union or as NATO or with our other partners. If we are divided and if we are on the European level, on the NATO level, and on the internal level, it is much more difficult for us to counter pretty well-organized Russian both war machine and propaganda apparatus.
So is disinformation becoming a polarizing issue?
I think nowadays everything can become a polarizing issue. The logic of social media, in a way, creates an environment where it's much easier to conduct any kind of political activities in the polarized way. So obviously, disinformation is often a topic of conversations and political fights between different factions, and that's something that certainly is happening all over the world. And I'm not talking only about the Polish context. However, disinformation shouldn't be treated as the topic of political discourse or political conflict. It should be treated as a matter of national security, and the way that we counter it, in a way, shows how resilient we might be to all other sorts of attacks that might be encountering our.
And what are the main narratives that Russia is currently pushing in Poland?
Russia in the beginning of war decided on the escalation of war and their invasion in Ukraine, decided to focus on Poland on slightly different narratives than they utilize in other European countries, both from the West and the Baltic states as well. In Poland, it is very difficult for Russia to work with pro-Russian narrative. Well, I might say that our society is particularly resilient towards this type of narratives. So what Russia did is focus all their efforts in their cognitive operations in Poland towards anti-Ukrainian, anti-EU, and anti-NATO, to the lesser extent, narratives.
And it's working.
It is very difficult to confidently say how effective the influence operations are. There are some researchers that are claiming that they know exactly how effective the influence operations are, but there certainly have an effect on our public discourse.
We can see the change of the attitudes of Poles towards the Ukrainian refugees.
Yes, and that's one of the. I'm far from saying that the only reason for that is Russian disinformation, but certainly it's an important factor in that. Russia is sometimes trying to instill some kind of anti-Ukrainian narratives in our infosphere, and they do it all the time, actually. Only some of them are catching up. And Russia is quite good in identifying some kind of pressure points in the society, some kind of natural low-level conflicts that might arise from in any modern society, and amplifying them out of proportion. So they do both of these things, instilling some kind of new anti-Ukrainian narratives in Poland, but also amplifying the ones that they see are working and might potentially put a wedge between Poland and Ukraine.
Are they only amplifying narratives from one side?
No, that's something that is extremely interesting in the way that Russia operates. This is something that we call dual-track disinformation, and Russia employs that technique quite often. They're at the same time both supporting and countering both sides of the political spectrum. Because, as I mentioned before, the main goal is to sow chaos and polarization in Poland. So we can see that very often we're utilizing the same networks of bots that are pushing completely opposite agendas and completely opposite narratives. But it doesn't really matter as long as it's generating this internal conflict.
Research on disinformation is one thing, but countering it is another, and resilience building is part of it. Mm-hmm. And resilience building is very important for Polish MFA, and you're pushing strongly for the Resilience Council, right? Yeah,
I think that we actually already pushed for that. We created Resilience Council. We see that the only way to counter disinformation is to act within two principles: whole of government approach, where the whole government, all institutions and services are working hand in hand in countering and analyzing this threat. But even more important is this whole of society approach, where the governmental side is trying to cooperate with the third sector and with general population in Poland. And Resilience Council is a group of over 25 people that are representatives of the third sector in Poland, focused on countering disinformation.
Which country do you think right now is a leader in countering disinformation and influence operations in Europe?
Well, I'd love to say that it's Poland, and we're certainly among the leaders. We are obviously having a lot of issues with the intensity of attacks on our infosphere, but we are trying to be still a step ahead. In terms of analysis, obviously France is extremely good. In this regards, their Vision Agency is particularly good in analyzing the threat. In terms of building social resilience, it's certainly Sweden with their psychological defense agency, and also Finland with their with the whole of government and whole of society approach going back decades. So I wouldn't say that one particular country is a leader, because there's no competition in the EU right now, and I feel that over the course of last few years, we became much more efficient in adapting good policies from other countries, trying to build a shared and safe environment, information environment in Europe.
How important is societal awareness about disinformation and influence operations?
It is absolutely crucial. Let's imagine that we have the best experts countering disinformation in the world in Poland. We do not have them, but let's assume that we are the best in the world.
But I hope that you are working to have the best ones.
Almost the best. However, it matters very little unless we have a resilient society. Ultimately, what's important is how well foreign narratives coming from Russia or from other countries or from non-state actors, how well our society is resilient towards narratives that are trying to be instilled and upon them from abroad. And we can only do it through education, raising awareness, and through a plethora of programs that we are introducing right now in Poland that are aimed at building this social resilience, not only towards disinformation, but social resilience in general.
So how resilient are we?
we are getting better. It is the environment is difficult. We are getting better. The disinformation is becoming a matter of discussions between politicians, but also between people, just people.
But they're also lost, right? With the chaos, information chaos, there's being caused, for example, by new technology, AI.
It is difficult. So it is difficult, and it got even more difficult over the course of last year, where the prevalence of AI and large language models is actually making it very difficult to know what to believe, which often leads to apathy. We've seen some research conducted in Poland by the Warsaw University that is showing that quite a lot of people are so tired with the current information space that they decide not to engage with it anymore, which is a threat in itself. We need well-informed society, but it's getting more and more difficult to know on what kind of information can we actually rely.
So what are the three main points that you have on your radar right now to start with the resilience?
Resilience are long-term. First, in the long term, right now in the educational programs for primary schools and secondary schools, there are certain lessons that will have to be delivered in particular subjects that are teaching this particular resilience techniques and digital hygiene. But it will take root in years to come. In the shorter term perspective, I think the most important is the cooperation with already pre-existing NGOs and third sector organizations. So in a way, for many people, we are much more credible than the government itself. And as hard as we try to communicate some things, sometimes it's better when the same message is coming from a different messenger. And so this is the medium-term goal, is to bolster this particular approach. And the short term, I mean the usual, identifying and banning the bot networks in cooperation with the social media companies, pre-banking and debunking on any potential narratives that might hurt our infosphere.
Thank you so much. Definitely coordination and cooperation is the key in countering disinformation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
During France's snap elections in 2024, the Alliance for Europe and its partners discovered a Russian influence operation unfolding on Facebook. See how the NGO managed to pressure the platform's owner, Meta, to delete the harmful content.
Coordinated from the Sahel region, the Russian disinformation campaign saw unlabeled political ads published on Facebook pages posing as different parts of French society. The content was designed to discredit French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukraine. The disinformation watchdog Alliance for Europe noticed the campaign in its early stage.
We informed the French government and French regulators about the operation. And while they confirmed the recipients and they confirmed that they had received the case, seemingly from what we can see, they did not manage to stop the operation. We tried with the European Commission, we tried with all instances, and in the end of the day, what ended up working was not us just reporting things, but us actually going to Politico, a major publication, them starting to write an article and asking Meta why Meta had not responded to this threat that we had told them about, which then led to Meta, within a couple of hours of that phone call, taking down everything that we had found.
But how can other, perhaps less experienced organizations act upon similar and thoroughly different instances of disinformation?
As a rule of thumb, what you can do as a civil society organization is to really understand under what type of violation this operation is going under. Are they violating sanctions? Are they violating platform policies? Are they violating copyright? We had an operation impersonating PAP, the Polish press agency, using their logotypes, they were using their imagery, and that's copyrighted. So understand the different levers, the different legal levers, different platform policy levers that you have, and use them.
But there's another aspect to consider: backlash from the disinformation actors themselves.
We have had colleagues within the community receive images of their children being taken and sent to them with a warning. We've had, embassies call upon, researchers and journalists to come and have tea or like breakfast with them and so on. This is something that does happen, and we need to ensure that when these things happen, that we instantly do inform the security services and the interior ministries.
Legal counseling is indispensable, but there are ways to secure affordable help.
You can go and find pro bono lawyers who work in this kind of civic space. Organizations also, a lot of them do have lawyers within them who are maybe not lawyers at the moment, but have a legal background. And a lot of these laws are actually quite simple. They're really straightforward. Sanction legislation, for example, entails that if the entity that is producing the content is sanctioned, that content cannot be spread into European audiences.
According to the EU's diplomatic service data, France was the target of 152 out of 505 foreign information manipulation and interference campaigns perpetrated by Russia and China between November 2023 and 2024 alone.
Now let's see how we can engage with strategic communication and counter disinformation in an open society.
Use fact-checking tools. Trust ethical journalism instead of unverified social media accounts. Look beyond headlines. Take time to read the full story. Don't share information without verifying it. Report disinformation on social media platforms. You can strengthen your resilience against disinformation every day and help build a more informed, open society.
Digital repression and influence operations are two sides of the same strategy. Control at home, confusion abroad. The battlefield is invisible, but the consequences are not. So remember to keep calm and think deeply.